Hi everyone, nice everyone came today. Today we'll be speaking about DAOs and DAO tooling. We have some of very fine DAO contributors and DAO tooling builders here in the panel today. Before kind of diving into the introductions, I'll kind of define what a DAO is, what they've been used for in the past, and like why you would require DAO tooling in the past. DAOs stand for decentralized autonomous organizations. Some people call it group chats with bank accounts, but generally, what you can do, what you can call it, is a large organization of people that come together for a shared purpose. We've seen tons of different DAOs spin up in the past few years, very popular within Web3, and overall they've been used to do anything from collecting assets and collecting NFTs, building products and primitives, even things like bidding on the Constitution within the Constitution DAO in a recent auction. And yeah, so I guess just kind of leading over to what kind of size we're talking about in terms of DAOs. Overall, there's about $7.6 billion in assets and treasuries in DAOs today. At least last time I checked before, I guess the price went down another 10%. And then there's roughly over 650,000 active contributors to DAOs. That includes people that have made proposals or kind of voted in different governance proposals. And overall, that kind of gives you an indication of, I guess, still how early we are in terms of what scale we're talking about. So why do we need DAO tooling? Mostly, like I said, hundreds of different organizations, usually these DAOs individually, can reach up to, I guess, thousands of different contributors, and there's definitely a need to kind of coordinate the different people in these DAOs to kind of service this shared purpose. There's things like the legal structures that need to be accounted for, accounting, you need to know, I guess, the identity and reputation of different members of these DAOs and how you kind of service that, how you actually reward the right people that are contributing to these DAOs, pay them out, and all sorts of kind of different tools around decision making and how you kind of direct this large crowd into the right direction. That being said, I'm happy to kind of introduce our panelists. I'll let you guys kind of speak a little bit about who you are, what you're working on, and I'll just start with Florent over here.
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Florent, currently Director of Product at Messari. Messari is a crypto data aggregator and research platform. I've been working at Messari for a bit more than 3 years now. Actually was introduced by Fabric Venture to Messari, so I'm glad to be here today. We at Messari interact in a couple ways with DAOs. We've built a governance aggregator product that basically aggregates the DAOs that exist, the tools they use, and the proposals that are happening across the space. And we also have a protocol services kind of business arm where we sell kind of reporting and investor relationship function to DAOs. Thank you.
Moving on to Wojciech.
Nice. My name is Wojciech. I'm a founder of Mazury, FabricX company, so we've been supported by Fabric since day zero. We're building reputation layer for DAOs, Web3 contributors, and in general, we're experimenting in how your professional reputation will be looking like in a world of Web3, open APIs, NFTs, and whatever else. So. Yeah, we want to support DAOs. We want to deliver the best talent to DAOs. We're helping already really cool Web3 startups to hire. Yeah, we'll be talking today. I will be talking today about how can you, represent yourself while working for DAOs and while contributing to them.
Thank you.
I'm Rory, and I'm working on Noble, which is a project to make SaaS work for DAOs. And so a lot of these organizations are kind of, concerned about finance and other interesting projects, but they all still use Google, Notion, GitHub, and all the normal SaaS software. And so what we're trying to do is make it so that the fine-grained permissioning of who can access and the kind of custody and payment of these things, if the company doesn't have a credit card, phone number, or address, because they're not a company, how can they leverage the best kind of, of software in the cloud?
Okay, thank you very much, Rory. So now you have an idea of kind of who we're speaking with here. I guess diving right in, we'll start, I guess, on the more negative side of things, like what are the kind of problems we see today in DAOs? While DAOs enable, I guess, a very much lower barrier of entry for people contributing to products, working at companies, and actually helping build out, I guess, Web3 as we call it today. There's always a question between kind of how do you have the trade-off between the efficiency of centralization and targeted groups working full-time on a product versus a very decentralized open organization. And I guess onto the speakers, what are kind of the ways that you see large DAOs working today, and how do you see this trade-off kind of being met in between decentralization and centralization? I guess we can start with Rory on that one.
Sure. So I guess my thoughts here are that you know, this kind of structure, if it's easy to define, won't work for every type of business purpose. So if you imagine something that you create like Uniswap, if you've come across that, once it's written, it kind of just runs, and people don't need to maintain it that often, but maybe there's small parameters like how much should we charge for a trade. That's something that a lot of people want to be involved in because it's a financial system that's being used by millions of people. But otherwise, the system itself doesn't change a lot and doesn't require many teams that interact with the real world. The entire thing is on the blockchain, and it doesn't. It's kind of it's stateless. It kind of runs itself, and then you can have a lot of people vote on a small change, and that works quite well. And I think then you can involve quite a lot of people. Imagine like all the shareholders of Tesla or something voting on every little piece of the car. That would be inefficient. Whereas for a finance tool that doesn't change every day, and it's kind of decentralized, I think it works quite well. And so if you were to try and build a company that interfaces with the real world a lot, I think that would be more difficult to make decentralized and have everybody participate in governance, because then you just wouldn't be able to move as fast as you would in a dictatorship of kind of the normal company where you have a CEO. And so I think there are a lot of DAOs that kind of spun up over the course of the prices rising in crypto, a lot of people leaving the big corps and trying to go into crypto, and then they took what they knew with them, which is building products, like building kind of software. And the art of building a great software company has been defined as a dictatorship. At least all the apps on our home screens are usually, Delaware C Corps and not DAOs. And so I think people started running into issues with kind of an identity crisis, like should we let everybody involved, or should we have one PM who decides everything? And so, if it ends up being more of the latter, it might not be a great fit. And I think there's been a few examples where it didn't work out like that.
Yep, thank you.
I agree with this take a lot. So I believe right now the balance between, the agility and like product building DAOs and the stability of like decentralization and like governance is very much shifting to the second side. Product DAOs right now are having a hard time with like dealing with hierarchy, with deciding who's actually responsible for getting any work done and for building new stuff, while the DAOs that do that do governance around the existing assets or existing products are doing quite well. And the example that I like to use and like where DAOs can really excel is, for example, I really like this Facebook example. I don't know, Fynn, if you liked it, but for example, Facebook was founded in like 2004. Obviously, high growth company. We got to it was for a long time a startup that still had to get to many users. Still required a lot of new features being built, a lot of adoption to be created. But at some point, let's say in 2015, 2016, it became much more just like this platform where everybody already is. Everybody already daily uses. And next step for Facebook was the value extraction. And this is not always in the best interest of the users who want to use Facebook to connect with their families, that want to use it as like this, local town hall. And for example, or like in this example, in Mark Zuckerberg's and like shareholder interest is to extract more value, but in very theoretical world where this profit is not the most important thing for Mark Zuckerberg, but he wants to do a better product, better Facebook, we could suddenly transition that to a DAO, give ownership to the users who then now can vote on like, oh, what features now should we build? How should we approach censorship? And in this world, it's like it's not like perfect capital. Maybe it's a different capitalistic world, but you have this structure where like the product that is actually used by billions of people is directed by them as well, and it's not just purely used for creating profits. So this is my dream world for DAOs, where like we have products and entities that after some time transition to public goods that people can manage. They're probably not that good at building those products.
Yeah, I'd echo these 2 points, and I think in general, one issue that we've seen with DAOs is that they try to give the same rights to every token holders, which can be really difficult to do depending on what your protocol or your product or your community does. So one example is that anyone that holds comp can vote on collateral parameter change on the compound protocol, but there is probably only 300 people in the world that have the data to take that vote. So I think we're moving away from that with kind of like different sub-DAOs, different working groups. I know Optimism, for example, has a two-sided DAO. One is token holder. The other one is actually kind of a closed group that are not necessarily a token holder. So it's getting better, but this idea of everyone can vote on anything is not necessarily good. And that has been, I think, one of the core issues that we've seen lately. I think the two other kind of issues we're seeing is everything around onboarding and kind of starting to contribute to a DAO. When you start in a company, you have a HR department, you have the onboarding flow, you have your colleagues. Everything is very clear, everything is very structured. When you get into a DAO, depending on which DAO it is, it's a little mess. You get on a Discord group, you don't know where to go. You try to like dig into forums and you don't really understand how the forum is structured. Then you have to vote on another platform called Snapshot. Then maybe you have to vote on-chain and you have to pay for that. It's really a mess, both on the voting and contribution side. And I think that's one of the major pain points, and there are a couple kind of tools being built to kind of improve that. And then I guess the third one is treasury management. A lot of these DAOs have huge treasury. Fynn said it, $7.6 billion kind of dollars in treasury. That's a lot of money. But a lot of them are not specialized in treasury management. So with kind of the market going down right now, a lot of the DAOs are kind of holding most of their treasury into their native assets, and they don't necessarily have kind of a good kind of risk management, and they didn't necessarily kind of move funds to stable coins. And so they were planning to build something with, let's say, a $1 billion kind of treasury, and now it's probably 200 million. It's still a lot of money, but some DAOs are more affected than others. So I think these three issues, and there are a lot more kind of issues we're seeing, but it's also where there's a lot of opportunity for kind of tooling to come into place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very good points mentioned. I think some of the learnings we've probably made over the past, I guess, 2 years has been what specifically do you involve the community with and what do you not involve them with, right? If you vote on every single feature that's supposed to be launched, that will obviously slow down things a lot. Also in terms of like what Florent and Wojciech were saying, allowing everyone to vote on everything might not always be, I guess, first of all, you won't have everyone participating in every single vote because people don't have time for it. And you might not have, I guess, the most informed decisions for all those people. So you've seen, I guess, DAOs kind of going in towards less frequent kind of governance proposals and like bigger decisions that have to be made with buy-in from the community, as well as kind of very popularly, I guess, ENS or some other DAOs or companies like adopting this, like the delegate system, where you can delegate your votes towards other people that represent you, similar to what we see, I guess, in modern day politics. Yeah, I think that definitely talks about some of the main problems we have today. I guess something that I'd like to dig into from your perspective is, I guess we see some differences between interacting with, I guess, either from a business development point of view, selling your products, or working with the contributors individually. How has your experience been kind of working with these kind of entities compared to centralized companies? And how do things like your sales cycle change for this? I guess, Florent.
Yeah, so at Messari, we really have kind of two sides of our business. The first one is really kind of classic. We have an enterprise SaaS tool kind of seed-based model, and so a lot of our users are going to be big crypto companies, big traditional finance companies, fintech, kind of funds, etc., etc. So that side is pretty classic. The other side is our protocol services arm, and there we actually sell different services, mainly around kind of reporting and investor relationship to different DAOs. And I think the end game is the same, which is you need to convince that your product or your service is good. So like the techniques are kind of the same, but kind of navigating the organization is a little bit different there. First, I think you need to understand how does the decision get made. It's a little bit different from like a traditional company where you'll have someone that you talk to, and then maybe it gets approved by legal and finance. Here you need to understand how does the treasury get allocated, for example, if you want to sell a service. And so you need to look into the governance structure. Some will have all of the decision go for like a proposal, and so everyone is voting on that proposal to decide whether you can sell your services or not. Others will have structured the DAO in a way where they have a grant committee, and that grant committee has been elected by the token holders, but kind of interacts independently and takes decision independently from kind of the token holders. So the first thing you need to do is understanding the DAO structure, and sometimes it's a mess. And then once you've understood who takes the decision, you need to understand how does the decision get made exactly. And so some DAOs have really complicated process where you need to post on a forum, you need to go through an off-chain vote, then through an on-chain vote. It can be a multi-step approach. So there's this difference, which is you really need to dig into how do DAO make decision in terms of treasury spending. And then it's also you need to make sure that you're getting the buy-in from the community. And I think one of the mistakes sometimes is just to go on the forum and say, hey, I have this cool idea, I want to sell that, because what you realize is the core contributors most of the time are the one kind of pushing for the decision, and then the community is following. So it's really a matter of like navigating the different communities, kind of not really playing kind of a political kind of role or relationship, but it's really understanding how decisions get made and how to go through that. And then the payment also can be different. They can pay in native assets, they can pay in stable coins. There is some kind of yield payment mechanism, kind of like spend less, where the DAO will put treasury into a vault and you get the yield. There's a lot of different ways to get paid with DAOs. So it's really different from enterprise, I guess, deals from a BD point of view. But at the end of the day, you just want to sell your service and convince that it's good.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Maybe Rory, from your perspective, how has it been kind of interacting with different DAOs that you work with on a day-to-day basis? And yeah, how kind of the decision-making process from a tooling point of view gets
Yeah, so I guess my experience so far is different to Florent, and I guess that kind of goes to just show that there's not a standard way of doing this. It's not like when you're selling a new SaaS tool to the CEO of another corporation where they make an internal decision, there's a lack of information, and they just decide we're going to pay you. We're at a stage where we're actually not charging the organizations, and so therefore, because we're not trying to extract money out of the community treasury at this moment in time, we haven't had to need to go and propose in public. And kind of the problem I was talking that we're trying to solve, which is around, these SaaS tools, which generally have one root user, in most cases the CEO of a company, who can, take control of anyone's email account or, control all of the code in the database. That person, in terms of the software we're trying to integrate with, which often case is Discord, generally I would just approach that person and work with them, because they're the person who the DAO has decided is in charge of the community. And installing new tools there is what they do, and generally I just source them out. And kind of from a customer support and like continuing the relationship perspective, because what we do is used by both the kind of person who's in charge of the organization plus the individual members who may be just trying to learn something or try to participate. We kind of have to integrate with or interface with both of those parties. And obviously they have different assumptions. Some of the members, they don't know anything about the organization. They're just trying to, get access to whatever private channel they want to. And so it's interesting from that perspective, because it's not like everyone has context. And the access control that may have been laid out by this organization could be completely different to another one. And so from the kind of human interface side way, I feel like it's similar to the financial one, where it's kind of a wild west right now. And although people think there's a saturation of DAO tools, a lot of the problems and patterns that we think should be solved by this plethora of tools have not been solved. There is no standard way of kind of approaching sales and customer support right now in these organizations where nobody is revealing their email address. Everyone has random usernames. And the beauty is that you can have organizations that are stateless and can permit many things that weren't permitted before, but there's obviously a lot of challenges that come with it too.
Thank you.
I can give like very short and actionable answer to this question: how do you sell to DAOs? And I'm just gonna confirm like how messy is the process. Every DAO has like a different people responsible for that. Sometimes I saw a fun example of what my friends at one startup were doing to sell their solution to Gitcoin. And for example, for them, the process was to go on Gitcoin DAO forum proposal, or like place where you do proposals, and they were they were proposing to start a working group on integration with their product. So that was a very fun thing to sell. So you go to the DAO and say, oh, we're putting the proposal to fund a working group of people within this DAO to then use our product, which is free, but it's kind of like how we're gonna get there. And yeah, sometimes it's fun to read those proposals or those or like to experience those situations, because they're so different than the current system, and they will be evolving. And to shortly answer the question, how do you sell to DAO right now, is like, it's a wild west. You need to figure out yourself. On the other side, DAO have the tendencies to overspend massively, because there's no accountability in like spending, and like they account in their own governance tokens, which came with like out of nowhere. So yeah, it's a fun topic that everybody needs to explore on their own.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I think how some of the DAOs work right now is that you have one kind of big pool of a treasury, and then a lot of different working groups or kind of pods or whatever you want to call them that actually service this treasury and then pull resources from it. So depending on how the structure is, like Florent was saying, you have different approaches to how you either work with them and contribute, or you actually provide tooling and actually charge them for your services in a different way. I think maybe also staying with Wojciech here, in terms of, I guess, so you're building kind of an identity layer around contributors, so right, giving them the right badges, letting them identify themselves to get recognition for their contribution, and let kind of recruiters and stuff like that understand what this person has done on chain within different DAOs. When you kind of partner with different organizations that that you do badges with, or right, in terms of signaling, what are the things that you look for in a DAO in terms of metrics, either qualitative or quantitative, that help you understand this is the one I want to target? Is that maybe how big their balance sheet is? Is it the number of contributors? Is it right activity in the forums, and how kind of active those people are?
Yes, so this is the incredibly fun part, and this is what I spend 12 hours a day thinking about, and this is what me and my team are building right now. And every iteration cycle, we're essentially like trying to improve this experience. So to give, I'll be talking for a moment about my product. I guess I will use that to show, to give everybody perspective of what we're doing at Mazury. And I would love to show you some slides, and like I could talk about it an hour, but maybe I'm just gonna finish in a way that we're essentially building a Web3 LinkedIn. In a very short simplification, we have a profile page. Instead of your real first name, last name, we have Ethereum address, ENS name, or whatever username you want to use. And instead of your job experience provided by you, we just read we read data from different products, like we mentioned Snapshot, we read some on-chain activity, we read your mirror posts, and like whatever Web3 credentials or like professional piece of data there is, we either already integrated with it, or like we will integrate with that in the future. You can also search people, etc. So it's just like source of your professional reputation in Web3. And now the fun part is, first of all, this is possible to be now with Web3 tools, it's possible to build something like that. You can imagine an example that you went to work for Apple. Apple is like known for being a super secretive company that doesn't really allow you to share anything that you did. And doesn't allow you to work on any open source tools or anything. They pay you well, but they essentially like try to exclude you from the whole society. So after those 4 years at Apple, you don't have much to show off. Like if your product shipped, that's amazing, and you're a star. But if you work in something internal, you never can show it off. And with DAOs, it's different because like the nature of work is by default public. It's like mostly working for an open source product, and we have a growing set of tools that allow you to then show. First of all, to display your public work, to display your GitHub, to connect your GitHub to your Ethereum address, to show off that your voting and your decision making is on chain, it's public, your writing is public, and increasingly more of those like actions that you do on your job will be also public. And first of all, we can aggregate them. Next step. We'll not be talking about it. Next step, we'll be doing this in like privacy preserving way. So DAOs also do some private stuff. For that, we will have zero knowledge proofs, which is beyond the scope of this talk. But essentially, we are building a world where we will be able to prove what you did at Apple without saying exactly what you did at Apple. But yeah, thanks to this openness of data, we're able to build those profiles. So you have a reputation that is like going with you across the whole journey. So yeah, like you can go to an next DAO and say, oh, yeah, I did exactly this at the past DAO. You can trust me because my Mazury profile says so. And as well, if you are recruiting as a Web3 startup for a highly specialized position, in crypto and Web3 right now, you can use this to be certain that the person that you're hiring has a proper experience, they're not lying on the resume, and it's like Web3 native. So this is just a fun unlock for new wave of like representing yourself professionally.
Yeah, so that kind of gives I guess tying it back to the question in terms of like who to work with, this gives people the right profiles to identify who to hire, who you might want to collaborate with, and give the right data around contributors on an individual level. You
can get the vibe of like, do I want to work with this person much shorter, much faster than usually? So by default, you work in DAOs, we work remotely, we work on the internet, and we can immediately trust the person and see that their contributions across the years, and like immediately be like, oh, this was fun. I vibe with this person. I like them. I would love to work with them. Where like in a traditional sense, like 10 years ago, like you need to fly them in for an on-site. You have like 7 interviews. It's still happening, of course, in like for example in Apple, but like again, this type of work is different and has its own new rules, which is exciting.
Mm-hmm. So I guess moving it back to like B2B in terms of like when you as a DAO tooling company look at what companies would you like to work with, which of them are attractive, I guess pointing to Rory, how do you decide what is an attractive client to you? What are the kind of metrics you look at to make that decision from a tooling perspective?
Yeah. I guess like one thing we would consider is how well does our product fit into what their needs are today? And then there's also kind of like which organizations we'd want to grow with going forward. In terms of what we're developing right now, I'm really focused on the more kind of like financial organizations, as DeFi is the area. And for anyone who's not familiar with DeFi, it's basically people building every product that Goldman Sachs offers in Solidity on the blockchain so that you don't sign in with a username and password, you don't submit your passport, and you can create your own index or basket. Which is crazy compared to the traditional finance system. And I think even with the bear market, these type of organizations are the most sophisticated. And I think that comes for a few different reasons. One, because you can build a DeFi DAO that doesn't have to try and interface with the real world. Like most of what we're building is trying to build an interface between the real world and blockchain organizations. And if you can build an organization that stays within its own field and doesn't try to jump in and back from the real world, I feel like it's easier to run, as I was kind of saying in the very first point. And then the other thing about this is that these DeFi organizations, they're kind of focusing on the first use case of blockchain, which was money, and they weren't trying to put tickets or metaverse or any of that. They were just trying to do money stuff, and people have been thinking about money on the blockchain for 10 years, and so I feel like the DeFi DAOs are the most sophisticated, and so that's kind of what I'm thinking about product-wise and in terms of just my own belief as to how the ecosystem will progress, because it just seems right now that they're the best fit for the technology. There's a lot of other interesting use cases, but because there's a lot of real-world interaction, that requires trust. And the idea of blockchain and DeFi is that you have trustless banks, trustless exchanges, where you don't have to hope that the bank will keep your balance and not steal your money. It's like you don't have to trust anyone. There's no white man in a tall building who controls the whole system, and that's what's exciting about it. And so that's, I guess, the type of organization that I'm trying to focus on right now, only because they are the most developed so far, and they also have a lot of capital to spend on making their processes more efficient. Where I feel like the more left field projects are still trying to work out how DAOs apply to their area. However, there are a few that we're involved in and we're helping out, such as City DAO, who are trying to essentially divide up pockets of land in Wyoming, which the state has more flexible DAO laws. And then there's a lot of other organizations that are essentially just pooling capital to try and buy art or take people out of prison and things that otherwise, might get shut down if incorporated or set up as a nonprofit. And I think, there's obviously a lot of lawlessness and some crime that can happen with these type of structures, but for the most part, just trying to focus on the positive outcomes and those that are kind of freed. Because say if you wanted to create your own basket or index on the New York Stock Exchange, you'd probably be writing papers and doing compliance for years and have to quit your job to just work on that full time, where today you can create your own Dow Jones by just deploying some code you pull off GitHub that include matches of Apple and Tesla stocks. And so you can really get creative. And so that's kind of my overview of the landscape and what we're trying to focus on.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so sector-wise, DeFi is the focus. Florent, do you look at things like total value locked, how big the treasury is, how many users are in the DAO, when you decide who you target in terms of your kind of services?
Yeah, so historically we've been having a lot of inbound and not full capacity on our side to actually treat this inbound. So it's been more, I guess, looking if it's, I think the first thing we look at is it a rug or is it a scam? I think that's important because now the DAO, if you look on Twitter, you'll find so many accounts that have added DAO at the end of their, company name, but it could be a rug, it could be a scam, the team could not be legit. I think those are the primary things we look at, even before looking at the actual metrics, because we do sometimes work on reporting for kind of early stage protocol that might not have, a huge TVL, but might have a really interesting design potentially. In general, we focus on protocol DAOs and kind of protocol in the wide sense, not just DeFi protocol. It could be a Web3 protocol or a gaming protocol. But the reason why we do that is that they have a lot more data, and our role is to kind of do reporting on that data, on their key developments. So it makes kind of our value addition much higher than looking at a community DAO, for example, where the only thing we could look really at in a reporting function will be kind of like the proposal that I've voted on, the organization of the DAO in terms of structure, which is already something we do on our product. But yeah, I think some metrics could be useful, but it really boils down to, first, you don't want to have your name attached to any project, and there's a lot of projects in the space that are potentially not legit, and I think that's the most important. And then what are you trying to achieve and what is your edge? Because the DAO's landscape is like so different. In terms of user research, we talk with a lot of different DAOs. So we talk with protocol DAO, product DAO, community DAO, social DAO, collector DAO. service providers selling to DAOs because we want to understand their pain points. But in terms of actually selling the services, we focus on the ones that have a lot of data. And so an advice, I guess, is like, what is your edge as a product? Is it better equipped for DeFi DAO? Is it better equipped for community DAO? Or is it something generalized that you want to build? And in that case, you need to talk with everyone because everyone structured their DAO and their use case differently. A DAO is just this term we use for this novel form of organization, but it can be buying a golf court or actually running a protocol that is a new type of financial primitive. So it's pretty wide.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I guess the recurring theme here being like data availability or like how much data there is being an attractive thing for DAO tooling to actually dig in and help out and actually effectively analyze, I guess, traction or what the product is kind of working on. That makes a lot of sense. Moving on kind of to another topic, reputation, which I think is very important in terms of Web3 contribution. I mean, generally, identity is this thing that's being molded over time in terms of Web3, either from complete anonymity to people being super open and public about who they are and what they're working on. And I think as you're seeing kind of reputation build up over time, this is one of the kind of key mechanisms we have to make DAOs more efficient in terms of who do we give more responsibility, who do we give access to certain tooling, who should we hire, for example, and different things like that. So I think right now, or like earlier on, like on-chain reputation was very, very binary. So I think it was in terms of, do you hold a token, yes or no? Did you vote in a governance proposal, yes or no? Very kind of simple metrics to I guess, assess identity on, or reputation of contribution. But I think as we move from kind of this black and white binary kind of spectrum into more and more color over time with more and more pointers and pieces of data, if that's like a POAP, so like proof of attendance protocol, so like I attend a certain event, I get a badge for it, right? That shows me, hey, this person is involved, he likes the space, he or she likes the space. And I think you see over time as these on-chain activities grow in terms of like variety and also sophistication, that become more qualitative, right? Referrals from other people. I loved working with this person. She's great at doing this. That will get more and more interesting use cases in terms of reputations, which I think will be very important for DAOs moving forward, and also for DAO tooling to properly assess who to work with and how to kind of work with different people in that organization. I guess just from my point of view, or I think that's an interesting space that I'm spending time on. And I think, Rory, given your product is around kind of who you give access to in a Discord or a DAO to access certain things, if that's the G Suite, if that's Figma and designing certain things, or even on the further case, who do you give access to a treasury and enabling them to spend things? Or soulbound tokens, a recently created concept where you have certain NFTs that stick with the person instead of being transferable and let them kind of build a reputation within their wallet over time. So I guess going over to Rory, how do you see kind of reputation building over time, and how does this affect, I guess, the work you're doing within Noble?
Yeah. So I guess, again, similarly, reputation in one organization may not map directly, and I guess, you know, when you're trying to hire someone in a normal organization, you will look at their LinkedIn profile and stuff, but you obviously want to interview if it is more of a hierarchical organization that's private. And I think, like, when the decision is made to then use that reputation to make a decision on how far they can go within our current bands, like what will we give them access to view? Will we give them access to view everything? Or maybe everything's already public, and it kind of differs between different organizations. And like, there are some where you may have thousands and thousands of token holders, and it's all kind of flat and people vote on everything. And then there are other DAOs, kind of as we discussed, that look a little bit more like a normal product team of a tech company, like a small startup. They're probably not using a normal DAO contract. They're probably just using a Gnosis safe, which is kind of like a group wallet bank account. And it would be more like a decision like, oh, let's all vote Fynn to join our organization, and then we'll add him to all the private stuff, and then we'll all decide to fire him, and we remove him. And I think in that case, it's obviously simpler. It's more of like a binary decision. And so our approach anyway right now is to just really listen and learn from the organizations that we work with as to what signals they want to use for deciding whether people can get access to the documents or chat and the different kind of like levels of that. And there's a few different protocols that potentially Wojciech can talk about as well around, can you aggregate somebody's contributions into a number? Like, what is your credit score of participation? And I feel like there are a few that are doing this quite well, at least in terms of more like financial risk and reputation. If you were to, say, allow someone to borrow more than they staked, like kind of an over-leveraged type thing, you obviously want people to be reputable. But in the case of work experience and people joining and trust and things, I think it's a very case-per-case basis. And I don't think one number is going to solve all of the problems, is what I'm saying. Like aggregating reputation into a single figure is not going to work. And so our approach anyway right now is to just kind of study the smart contracts of our clients and then figure out what signals we can pull from them and usually leave it up to them and make it customizable rather than kind of opinionated, because it isn't really decided as to what the best method is, I don't think, right just yet.
Yeah. Yeah, and there being, I guess, a huge amount of people in an organization like this, and over time, hopefully, if we get reputation right, that you can effectively funnel these people and then give them the right access to these different things. But like you said, we're very early and kind of like unifying this whole thing across every type of DAO, which ranges from like a financial protocol to maybe somebody buying the constitution or something else. There's a very big variance of how you what you count as a good contributor today.
Yep.
I guess just noticing here that we're very short on time. We have about 2 more minutes left. I guess looking forward in terms of like the next couple of years, where do you kind of see DAOs and DAO tooling going, and like what do you think are the key things that need to be solved? I'll start with Florent.
I think there's on the DAO side, I think there is going to be more and more kind of sub-DAOs, working groups, DAOs that are not just one single DAO, but actually we're already seeing that with like Bankless as probably 12 sub-DAOs, all focusing on one specific thing. So I think we're going to go away from everyone need to vote on everything, and it's going to look more almost like a traditional organization, but a little bit different in terms of allocation of capital, entry and exits, and kind of fluidity there. So I think that's going to be a big trend. On the tooling side, I think a lot of DAO tools are going to die. I mean, if you're entering a bear market, it will be harder and harder to get funding. There's already a lot of tools that exist, and a couple winners are going to emerge, but a lot of them, the long tail of tools is going to die. But I think that the important thing there is going to be composability. So in 2018, 2019, a lot of DAO tools were focusing on like bringing everything to their platform or their operating system, like Aragon Colony. And now we're building Snapshot, for example, Governor Alpha Bravo for voting. You have Gnosis Safe that was mentioned, and DWork. There is a lot of kind of composable elements that can play together. And so we're going more to like composable kind of building blocks rather than one-size-fits-all kind of operating system, I think.
Interesting. I think we have about 3 more seconds left. I would have loved to have open to questions, but I guess, do we have a couple more minutes? For
No, I think that's unfortunate.
All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for coming.
To our panelists.
Thank you.